welcome back to episode 2 of New England Road Talk. I'm Conrad Leger from Environmental Partners, and I'm joined again by Art Baker of Indus and Bobby Betsold of All States Materials Group. Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good to be here.
Going great, Conrad. I'm not looking quite as dapper as you two in your nice quarter zip sweaters, but as the old guy representation of this group, I'm really rocking this plaid. What do you call this thing?
Button down, nice button down shirt.
Corduroy button down shirt.
There you go. Hey, so just to kind of recap what we talked about in episode 1, we got through kind of how the industry has been affected by COVID, and we started to get into some details about how public works directors could start prepping for the 2021 paving season. So today I want to talk a little bit more about, a topic that I could talk about all day, which is pavement management, and how that benefits the agencies and each of the directors who use and utilize those programs. So first off, I wanted to start out with Art, you talking about some of your experience from your days of being a public works director, and talk about why pavement management is a critical tool for these directors and these agency workers to be able to plan their pavement maintenance and preservation moving forward.
Sure. So when I started out my public works career, it was about 12 years ago, I guess it was. Actually, no, it was about 15 years ago down in Monroe, Connecticut was my first stop as a public works director. And what I struggled with was every year I put the road program together and my staff and I would work on it. And no matter what plan we put together, we would always get criticized on the roads that got chosen, whether it be, it wasn't the road of the politicians. It wasn't the road of, some of the locals that had roads that were in bad shape. But we tried to put together a plan that would best boost that condition of the overall network in town. And so what we decided to do is we worked together to put together what we termed a comprehensive pavement preservation program. And the first step in that program was the pavement management plan. And the criticality of it was, we got to choose roads that we got to take the funding that we had available and we got to pick roads that best utilize that funding and analyzed what we called, the PCI, the pavement condition index, and best boost that overall condition. And what we found is it took a lot of the other variables, out of the planning. So we had an engineered plan, which I think is very critical. There's several different ways to do these plans. Some people try to do them in-house. And if long as you stay at it, most of the smaller communities might get away with an in-house plan. But once you get up into miles of roads in your network, it really helped us to have a plan done by the outside engineering came in and allowed us to pick roads every year that best boosted that overall condition of our network.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen a lot of municipalities try to do these programs themselves. And I think it's valid to say that, as the road miles come up, let's face it, everybody has other priorities that they have to deal with and other issues that they have to deal with in the community. So, having an outside consultant come in and help out with these things who specialize in them definitely makes sense. So, Bobby, why don't you talk about how the pavement management programs from the contractor side of things, how it helps you in helping the communities find opportunities to save money in the long run?
Yeah. So, as we talked about, in episode 1, a little bit about in terms of getting out ahead of things and trying to put your plan together. First off, just the timing, and having a 3-year, 5-year plan, that's a critical part. And having the condition, knowing the measurements, all those things that go into putting together your spec. When a community has their pavement management plan, has a good comprehensive plan in place, it just allows that whole first start of the contracting, the bidding, that whole process goes so much smoother. Bids can get out ahead of time. They have candidates that you can go out and look at, the season before. They can start doing some of the prep work, whether it be tree work, guardrails, culverts, any type of prep. That stuff can be done earlier. All those things that, as we talk about here in New England, we have a short construction season. So the more information that a community has, just the better that overall plan is going to be. And it allows us to, hone in on what the best candidates are for them, for the treatments that they want to be using.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hear people, some of the folks who are in these situations, they wonder if investing in a pavement management program is worth it. is the cost up front worth it in the long run? I've even heard some directors tell me, hey, I know my roads better than anybody. And, why should I invest in a pavement management program? And I heard one director, actually a town engineer, say it best, that if they make one right decision because of their pavement management program, the program has paid for itself. So one opportunity to either save money by preserving a roadway and making that life cycle of that roadway last longer, or just a decision on which roadway to do over another roadway. Also, I like to think of pavement management as a marketing tool for the DPWs for what they need compared to what they think they need. It's data-driven analysis. It allows them to be able to confidently go to their decision makers who make the decision on funding, and be able to back up their requests for funding. So, in your experience from being in public works, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant struggle. The pressure for the municipalities to work on their bad roads is tremendous. They're not getting phone calls to work on a road that is in good shape. Let's face it, they're getting the calls on the roads that have potholes on them, the roads that drive real bad. And the whole purpose of putting together a pavement management plan is to work on those roads to prevent those conditions from ever occurring. And that's what this pavement management plan really allows you to do. It really allows you to focus, putting together a program that has a variety of treatments. That's key. I can't tell you how many of these plans that I do see where they might only have 3 treatments in them. They might have crack sealing, they might have mill and fill, and they might have full depth reclamation. So they're missing a huge portion of that deterioration curve, which I know we're going to talk about more in episode 3. But they're missing that whole upfront opportunity to preserve a road and save it before it gets to that next condition. So I think finding a way to take the pressure off that worst first scenario is what a pavement management plan does. It shows people that, yes, you don't want to neglect your bad roads. You still need to chip away at your bad roads, but you can't take all that funding that you have and spend it just on your bad roads, because then those roads that you could have saved are going to be bad, and you just keep chasing your tail, chasing after bad roads all the time.
Yeah, it's funny because the most difficult thing that I've dealt with when I come into a new community who hasn't had a pavement management program in the past is to kind of reset their thinking, get them into a new mindset and open to the opportunities of, preserving roadways or just maintaining them. Implementing a crack sealing program that costs very minimal money, but maybe that treatment has gotten a bad reputation from a bad experience in the past. So it's just kind of resetting the folks' minds who are making those decisions and what types of treatments they use.
Yeah, Bobby and I work together. That's what we do on a daily basis, basically, is try to help these municipalities find ways to, convey that message, because a lot of the public works folks actually get it, but they have trouble conveying that message to their decision makers, to their finance boards, to their town councils. And if they're able to get this pavement management plan adopted and approved, that is, to me, the first step in getting everybody to recognize, what's important in preserving their road network.
Yeah, I think, that's a good point, Art. And, we think about a lot of times, all of us, who are our customers. And for, a DPW director, a city engineer, their customers are the residents and are the driving public.
That's right.
So the same way that, a company may go in and have a product or have a solution or things like that, this, the town has to have a plan and has to have the information, their background to then take to their customers as the driving public, as the taxpayers. And that's where that pavement management plan is that information. So that really enables them to go forward with what they want to do, and in a way that makes sense and is fiscally responsible.
And, I look at it as like when you go buy a new vehicle, the manufacturer has a set of maintenance guidelines for you to follow to preserve that vehicle so you get the most life out of that vehicle. A road is the same thing. You really should preserve it along the way, just like you do with oil changes with a car, to help you get the most life out of that asphalt.
Right. And I see, most of the communities that I work with, obviously they have pavement management programs. So I'd be interested to see, you guys work with a number of communities all over New England. And I'm interested to see what challenges you see with communities that don't have a pavement management program. So Bobby, maybe you could talk about some of your experience.
Yeah, so I think what I first, just to briefly start with is, we hit on a little bit, and Art, you mentioned, initially in terms of what you did with setting up, the plan that you had, is for all communities, a pavement management plan could look very different. Especially when we get into rural areas, rural communities, it could be a very simple something that they do in-house. It's an Excel spreadsheet or some type of a database, but it's something that starts that they can use and go from there. And then up into, again, the further you go, getting into programs and stuff that's been done through consultants, engineers. So I think that's the first critical point is to say, hey, having something is better than having nothing. But in terms of planning, it absolutely is critical, and you can tell a community that has a plan versus a community that doesn't. And I always say it's one of those where the communities that are reaching out to you in the fall or even sometimes sooner to say, hey, these are my candidates, this is what I'm thinking for next year. Or, I mean, sometimes you can have towns that are telling you a year or two in advance, yeah, I think I'm going to look at this road in a year or two and just trying to keep an eye on it, versus when you get the phone calls in March, April, May, sometimes even, and this is the work I'm looking at for this year. It's tough. You're really you're behind the eight ball at that point in time. And then your quantities and putting together the bids or things of what's missing. So it's not just the treatment, but it's the ancillary items, all those things that can really get in the way or slow down a potential project and work.
Yeah, and
go ahead, Tony.
I think it really lends itself to continually thinking about your roadway program and all the different aspects of it, not just, I want to treat my bad roads, or I know where my bad roads are, or somebody's complaining about this road. It continually keeps you thinking on a yearly basis about your program, what's working and what's not working. So are you going to jump in?
I was just going to jump in and say, that one of the biggest challenges that I hear from, all the clients that I deal with, and to me, it's a little bit of a misconception, is they think they don't have enough money. They don't have enough money to maintain their roads. And although it may be a fairly accurate statement, how you spend that money becomes even more critical. No matter how much money you have available, how you spend it becomes critical. And that's what a pavement management plan helps you do. It helps you spend that available funding, in the best means possible. And I just think that's important to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I wanted to shift gears a little bit here and talk about successful programs versus failed programs, because there's a lot of really good programs out there, but there's also a lot of stories where programs don't become successful. You talked about your Monroe experience in implementing the plan, and I'm guessing if you're mentioning it, it was a successful program. But let's talk about some of the issues that come up with pavement management programs and why they don't become successful.
So let me first start yes, I believe it was successful. And the reason I say that is because when we started, our overall PCI rating was a 61. And just checking, we still do work there in Monroe today, and it's up to a 76. That's over a period of 10 years. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, but a 15 percent, let's call it, gain in 10 years is pretty good. And I think the point is that these programs have to be sustainable. In order for them to succeed, it's not something that you just throw money at, for 1 or 2 years and think, bang, my network's going to be in great shape. It's something that you have to get sustainable to a point where you can fund it every year. And then what you find is after 10, 15 years, you'll start to need less money to maintain that network. So I think in order to have a successful program, it's something that you really have to keep focused on and fund, at a fairly good level year over year. And so otherwise it just becomes something that's on a shelf collecting dust. And the other thing is updating it, every single year, whatever roads you do, go out and update them. And in addition to that, on a fairly regular basis, 2 years, maybe 3 years, is updating that, doing another inventory condition analysis and keeping that updated condition analysis accurate.
Agreed. I think as you were talking there, the word that keep coming to mind was commitment. You've got to be committed to that program. And I think that commitment and that buy-in starts in the very beginning. So it's when you say, okay, we're gonna create this plan. It's having the buy-in from, public works, from engineering, from your boards of selectmen or your city councils, from your finance team, to Art, to your point, is that it's, everyone has to commit from their side. So whether it be the funding side, whether it be the management side, the public works, that, we're going to go out, we're going to do this. But then along with that commitment, also realizing that you have to have a certain degree of flexibility. So just because you have a plan and you put that plan out there and it's got, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years program, things change. We're in New England, 1 or 2 bad winters, 1 or 2 easy winters, stuff can shift around. So keeping an eye on it, and that goes along with the updating part of it, in terms of doing that. But I think those are the 2 big things, is that, you have that. And, the other thing, and Art, I think, you and I run into this a fair amount, is when key decision makers change. A lot of times that's when you see a plan will fall off. Huge. So, again, the more commitment that you have across the entire community, you're able to sustain and maintain even when you have personnel changes.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I struggled with. Even trying to get it initiated and get it off the ground was difficult. But once we got it off the ground and people started to see the improvements being made, everybody got on board and there was a much bigger commitment there.
It's funny, Art, you talked about the car maintenance, and we're right after New Year's right now here in 2021, and I liken it to a weight loss program where, you might not get results in week 1, 2, or 3, but it really takes a commitment in the long run in year 1, 2, and 3 to be able to see the results at the end of the light at the end of the tunnel after, 4 or 5 years being in the program. One of the things that I see as well is that, people go into a pavement management program and they don't understand what they actually want to get out of it. So they'll be enamored by a technology, or they'll think that their staff can handle a big, robust program when all they really need is something simple to get started. Obviously, my experience shows that mapping of your assets is very important so that you can understand the big picture of things. But you don't necessarily need the highest end pavement management program to be successful.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say you need the highest end, but I think you need something that is a good mix of some treatments. Like going back to my comment about, just having crack seal, mill and fill, and full depth reclamation. To me, that's not a pavement management plan. In fact, that's usually what most people, or a lot of people, have been doing. That's got them into the trouble that they're getting in. That's got them where they are today. So, embracing the top of that deterioration curve a little bit earlier in the cycle with other treatments, chip seals, great treatment in the rural, areas, microsurfacing, fog seals. We'll talk about all that in the next episode, but getting to understand it. If you don't know or understand these treatments, ask whoever you're hiring to do your pavement management plan, if you are hiring somebody, or utilize your other resources. Like, for example, we talked about roadresource.org. Great place to learn about these treatments if you don't have any experience with them. And then lastly, talk to other public works directors in your network, other public works officials in your network that have done these treatments, to see what their experiences are. And I think that's a big part of it, is gaining confidence in these treatments that, let's face it, when I first did my first treatment as a public works director, when I did a microsurface and a chip seal, I had no idea what to expect, quite frankly. I was trusting my contractor, and most of the time it worked out good. But getting that trust on these treatments is a big part of it. And I think going around to your other public works officials and doing some research would really help you build that program, with the engineer that you hire to do it. And the engineer also giving them some guidance, giving them some different scenarios that they've had success working in other municipalities. That would probably help as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I always suggest is, when you're trying a treatment, is to make sure you go out and see it before you put it on the ground. Understand what it is. Understand what the life expectancy is of that treatment. Sure. Because if you're putting a fog seal on a road or a crack seal on the road, that is meant to add a certain value to that roadway. And I think some people don't understand the expectations of a certain treatment. They think if they put it down, that roadway is going to be good for the next 10 to 15 years, as if you're putting a brand new surface course on it. And it's just not the case. So it's one of the things that I always tell the municipalities that I work with, is make sure you're understanding what the treatments are, what the purpose is, and how long they're going to last.
Right. And how long they're going to last is that's the trick question that, kind of stumps us all from time to time. Because if you answer that question without looking at the road, it's really a loaded question. We
Yeah.
talk about different performance levels, optimum performance, average performance, and stopgap performance. So all these treatments, how long they're going to last depends on how early in the life cycle of that asphalt you get it down. The earlier you get these treatments down, the longer they're going to last.
So, I mean, Conrad, I think, one of the things we see, from a contracting side is a lot of times when a town, especially is early on with implementing a pavement management plan, is when they start to look at these new treatments, and that and stuff. And, they've been in that mold, or that pattern, as you mentioned, Art, of, having a couple things that they've done. Conrad, from your side of things, coming in as a consultant and, implementing that pavement pavement management plan, what do you see as kind of what's worked for communities in terms of starting to implement additional treatments and ramping up, not just in a year one, but, getting them to be accepted and become part of that plan and that program?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because it's one of the parts I love about my job is being able to work with all the different communities and the different sizes and the different situations, because it could depend on a number of different situations, available funding levels. It could depend on, what they've done in the past and what's worked and what hasn't worked. It could include, just the size of the network and the availability of the different treatments in their area. So it really depends on every single situation. But my recommendation is to just be open-minded, try things, and maybe not even try things, but research things. Understand that there are other options out there, especially if you've been been completely in the rehabilitation mode, haven't done anything on the top of the curve. We all know that none of the communities out there, even the best funded communities, have enough money to be able to maintain their roadways as they are. It's the nature of the beast. We're in New England, infrastructure crumbles. We have winters. It's not like down south where, the roadways might last a little bit longer and they deal with other issues. It's really, the fact that nobody has enough money to maintain their roads just by repaving them when they need to be repaved. You really have to prolong the life of the roadways, and make sure that you're hitting those roadways and saving the money at the time that you can.
And I don't know how much time we have left, Conrad, but I want to make sure I covered one of the best things I got out of the plan that we did in Monroe with the consultant that we had was that funding scenario. And maybe you can talk about it a little bit more. It gave us basically a graph of different funding levels and what it would do to our pavement condition index if we kept the same budget that we've been using, if we cut the budget, if we added more money to the budget, and all those different scenarios and what it did to our overall condition of the network.
Exactly. Yeah, no, we call it, or in my experience, I've called it a forecast model, is just understanding with data-driven analysis, what's going to happen to the roadway network over time at certain funding scenarios. And a lot of the consultants out there do the same exact thing. You can get industry standards that show you how to create those models. But I will tell you from, doing tons of presentations in front of Board of Selectmen, town managers, and even DPW directors and town engineers, they stop at that model every time because they want to understand, okay, where am I currently funding and what do I need to get to be able to either keep where I am right now or gain ground in the future. And again, that depends on a number of different components as well. You want to make sure that you synchronize your unit costs with what you're actually paying for the individual treatments, all of the work that goes along with those treatments, because that's going to affect that curve greatly. For a rural community that doesn't have many sidewalks and doesn't do sidewalk work along with their paving, then they're going to have a much different scenario than a city community that handles all of their ADA complaints or ADA issues along with their roadway paving program.
And another big hindrance that I just thought of, and I think all the consultants have gotten a lot better at it, but I remember like the big emphasis on the pavement management plan was, okay, this community needs $25 million in order to make their roads better. A big, huge number was thrown out to make the roads better when in actuality, what you needed was more money every year, a little bit more money every year. And I think people are really starting to focus more on that yearly commitment rather than that big dollar value, you know, to bring your network up to an 87 or a 90 or whatever. So I think that's helped promote more and more pavement management plans that have become useful documents.
You know, the other thing I think, Art, that's a really good point. Is that we see, you know, I've heard a lot of times, you know, communities say, oh, we're going to go out and bond this year, you know, and we're going to put a big number on it. We're going to do all this work this year, next year, and then move on. The problem with that becomes is if you do all of them all at once, you rehab them, they're all going to be up for maintenance at the same time, and you're going to be back into that same situation again. You know, it's not sustainable. So, you know, it's like everything, you wouldn't go and do all the work on your house or all the work on your car all at once. You know, it's, you take care of things in small pieces and kind of keep maintaining. So that's a really good point of spreading it out over multi-year. And again, that's where it comes back to having that plan and a multi-year plan.
Yeah. And I think the big thing with that too is that, you know, the bonds are needed because of the fact that the infrastructure is just not in the condition that it needs to be in. But it's not just looking short term, it's looking long term as well, and making sure that you have a preservation plan in place for when these roadways come up. So with that, I could talk pavement management all day, but you know, we're trying to keep these to about a half an hour a piece. So in follow-up episodes, you know, I know we've talked about content moving forward. Episode 3, we're going to talk about all the different treatments on the deterioration curve and the deterioration curve itself. And then we have some great content coming up here in the next couple weeks. So make sure you subscribe below. Check out our bios and links if you're wondering who we are and what we do. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of New England Road Talk.
Take care, everyone.